All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We're live from Los Angeles, and this is your host, Young Brando, ready to talk watches. We're wrapping up our coverage of the competing watches from GPHG 2025. The gala is going to take place in November, but the initial list was already submitted. Um, and I explained before that this is pretty much uh, anyone and everyone who applied, who filled out a form and sent them an 800, um, sent them the 800 Swiss franc admission fee or submission fee. So there's no filter, no real criterion or anything that goes into the choice of these initial pieces. So it's much harder, I think, to exercise some sort of judgment, but that's what I'm here for. So we will proceed. I will, before I pull that up, let me pin this link if any of you wants to join me in this conversation. All right, so we are back. And let me pull up the list of nominees again. If you want to alert me to any watch that I don't automatically discuss, because I'm not going to go through every single piece. And I have actually discussed basically everything but the last six categories. Um, so anything but sports jewelry, artistic crafts, petite aiguille, challenge, and mechanical clock. So if you have any suggestions from above, please feel free to send in a super chat and let me know, and I'll be more than happy to discuss those. Um, the categories, by the way, are always subject to change. I think, for example, the mechanical clocks category was removed last year, and it's back this year. There used to be a diver, like dive watch category that Tudor won almost always dominantly, which is now gone. There's a sports watch category that's more wide reaching, that's more wide ranging. Um, Even though now the chronograph category seems somewhat superfluous, but considering the number of watches that are submitted, it's hard not to it's hard to see them squeezed into one category, because um, certainly the dressier, more classically designed chronographs are in a minority among the submissions of this year, which I've discussed at the end of the last episode. Now, the sports watch category has, I think, 17 different submissions. I'm I don't have the patience to go through every single one of them, unless, again, you have a special request. I do want to highlight, however, at least a handful. Um, let's start with the obvious one and get it out of the way. Honestly, this is the new Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore self-winding chronograph. What's new about it is obviously not the complication, not the particular configuration of that chronograph, but the new shade of ceramic that they finally got right. This is basically modeled after the original dial color of the Royal Oak as it was born in 1972 from uh, a dial tapisserie dial that was personally chosen by Jarajanta from Stan Frere's catalog, and it was called Bleu Nuit Nuage 50. What it inspires is basically a cloudy night sky, more or less, and I think that's a very good description of that black and blue depth that a lot of those original 5402 Royal Oak Jumbos had. Of course, with the way they have aged, they have quote unquote tropicalized. Those shades vary from like a very brassy salmon at one end of the spectrum to pitch black at the other, and various shades of bluish gray right in the middle. However, this was apparently the first shade of colored ceramic beyond the black and the white that they wanted to come up with, but they just couldn't. That's why the initial blue is much more bright. And that was something that put off many people from that shade of blue, although I thought it was actually kind of fun. But this looks much more dignified and historically appropriate, especially when you draw the lines of that particular narrative. And they have already released Royal Oaks with this metal, like the 15407 has been dressed up in this blue. And this is the Royal Oak Offshore chronograph version of it, where the octagonal bezel as well as the pushers are rendered in this particular shade. Thank you guys for Oh yes, I'm so sorry, Sarti. I should have started with, and I always do usually, I should have started with the link that we are discussing. I will give you the exact page right now. Thank you. By the way, as much as I appreciate you, Sarti, I don't appreciate this other individual on my Kick stream who is trying to advertise something by telling me that he's not advertising, which is very puzzling to me. I shied away from choosing one thing from each category yet, because these are yet to be whittled down to 6 specific pieces that will be the actual nominees, that will be the finalists before they then announce the winner, I think around mid-November. So I hesitate to say just one thing, but I'm an AP fanboy, so chances are that I'm going to tell you, just because they have that new shade of the ceramic, it's the Royal Oak Offshore chronograph that should win the sports watch category. That being said, I think there are other strong contenders. I really like the Louis Moinet Time to Race Rush. It has an off-center dial at 6 o'clock with kind of a racing number that is always unique to a specific example of that watch, and that you can choose unless it is, of course, taken in that particular configuration. Thank you, by the way, John C. And Gilden, who are here. Gilden, when you say about the Royal Oak Offshore chronograph, that's a render image. I have not yet seen that particular piece in person, so I can't tell you definitively, but that dial shade is also different, at least in the render, to match the shade of the ceramic. So they do play around with the proportions, right? even the petite tapisserie that they use today for the jumbo, for the 16202, even though it takes after the original 5402, is not exactly the same, right? The original is a lot finer, whereas now it's a lot more prominent. They have come up with something they call lady tapisserie, for example, for some of the more feminine jam set versions of the Royal Oak Offshore. So they keep playing around with these little details, and that does obviously play with the proportions sometimes too. MCM says, I think about the new Royal Oak Offshore dial, that it is stamped. I wouldn't be surprised. It does look like that. I think by now it's probably the only the original Petite Tapisserie dial is pantograph carved, and the rest probably is more industrialized and produced by stamping. Of course, they should always they're always welcome to contest what I'm saying there. Anyway, I like the visuals of this watch. Nevertheless, I really do like that new shade of ceramic, but I mean, I don't think it's open to discussion that AP has, as with many other so-called elite and again presumably independent brands, as they have become more popular and as they started making more watches, obviously a lot of the attention to detail in their especially at the lower end or at the entry level of their catalog has completely faltered, right? You can certainly say that about Patek Philippe, at least since 2009 at the entry level, but some might argue even before. The other piece that I really like, I mean, I'm not going to highlight Laurent Ferrier Sport Auto 79. I've never liked the design of that watch, never quite understood why it even has to exist, but that's just me. I guess every brand has to somehow have an integrated bracelet design now. So more power to Laurent Ferrier, which is a brand that I otherwise like a lot. I'll go to the Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda PF Sport chronograph when they had renewed the Tonda PF chronographs, or rather the Tonda Sport chronographs, which was previously called GT. They had this intrusive or disruptive date window right here at 4:30, and I'm glad they have quickly at least have provided an option, have made an alternative where those date windows are absent, which I think it's just a better look. It's just a more balanced dial layout, whether you are dealing with a 2-register or 3-register chronograph. I think it's pretty self-evident that this just looks better. It's really, I mean, yes, some people say that they need to have a date on their watch. I don't doubt that. I never felt that need. I'm usually very self-aware and know what date it is. That being said, forget about that. But the idea is that we wear mechanical watches in our day, not really to keep track of this sort of excessive information, right? It is actually to free up some time for more or less the aesthetic enjoyment and the technical marvel of these sorts of pieces. So for that reason, I don't think I will ever get the necessity of a date complication where it doesn't belong, where it especially seems to take away from the design. Now, the older pieces from the Tonda GT had the so-called big date that was placed right around 12 like the two-digit expression of the date. I think that was much nicer and looked much more balanced. But without it, perhaps things look even better for this new sport chronograph. This is basically a ceramic case, right? It's a material that they call cermet, right? Which is, I think, an alloy of ceramic and titanium, I believe. They are not very specific here when they say CER stands for ceramic and MET for metal. It's a high frequency caliber beating at 5 hertz, has this sort of wheel, the self-winding movement has this oscillating weight that has in its open working the look of a wheel. So there's that at least implicit motorsports or automotive theme. I think this is a nice, good-looking movement. Not really minutely decorated like you would expect from perhaps a higher level brands like Parmigiani, but it's also not so bad. I like the play of this kind of anthracite gray, tones of the case, as well as the vertically brushed dial and the navy, or maybe you can even say Prussian blue kind of. No, probably Prussian blue is a lighter shade of blue, if I'm not mistaken. No, it is. It is this kind of like a Prussian blue shade of the chronograph registers, and there is like a textured strap that goes with it. Now, I think for a watch like this, I'm mostly disappointed about the price point, which is almost $40,000 in Swiss francs, even though that includes the VAT. That's not chump change, right? So I do somewhat resent that. We had this long-standing discussion. MCM, thank you so much. This kind of support means a lot to me, and it certainly keeps things afloat here, especially at this level, right? Where I really don't get much of anything from AdSense, right? There's nothing that really feeds me on YouTube unless people subscribe to the channel and become members, unless they use other modes of support for YouTube and beyond, for which I have the links in the video description as well. So it means a lot. But yeah, I really like this piece, but for it to be on a strap and cost so much just because there's material experimentation, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much a lot of these brands can sustain a level of commercial success when they try to sell these kinds of pieces in a crowded market. It's very expensive for a ceramic or ceramic titanium chronograph, right? IWC obviously has much more volume. It's a more industrial brand. Its movements are a little more generic. Its cases and finishing of those cases are perhaps a notch below, maybe 2 notches below Parmigiani, but at least they have the good sense of pricing pieces that are similar to this in terms of their material at a much lower price point. Just to give you an example, I'm not a huge fan of this new color, actually. However, This is the IWC Top Gun 41 Pilot's Watch chronograph. And it's 13 and a half before tax, of course, right? So that, let's say that's 15,000. And I know, again, in terms of the complexity of finishing, in terms of the quality of the movement, and it's, one might say, quote unquote non-existent finishing, it's of course very, very different at that level. But just material experimentation on a strap watch, it's not gonna cut it. Not gonna cut it. You're not gonna find many buyers for what is essentially an unknown brand at that price point. Thank you, Basil. And thank you so much, Chalk Flew Up, as well. I appreciate all of you. And I will do my best to reciprocate your support tonight and forever, as Anthony Fantano says. So we're looking at the sports watches category still. I don't like this particular dial color, but the Bangalore Watch Company, I think, is a very interesting release for a number of reasons. I think they have a very fascinating looking, kind of like a PVD coated version of this piece. I think it's, first of all, I think it's brave that they submitted this into the sports watch category rather than, challenge. I don't know if they have other watches in the challenge category, because it's a watch that's priced at that level for that segment, right around 1,100 in Swiss francs, including VAT. It is an Indian company. And as you know, India has had its own watchmaking legacy, of course, but they're also trying to make a stronger comeback now, because it's one of those markets, one of those newer markets for horology that presents a lot of room for growth and expansion, especially with the advent of a new middle class in that country. So I think it's quite expected that we will see more and more Indian brands as time goes by. So very kind of like a disco volante style watch, in the sense that it's a perfectly rounded case without lugs, here presented on a strap, on a rubber strap at that. This is how it looks from behind. I want to see if I can find that blacked out version of this watch, which I liked a lot. I was ready to write to them and possibly even put my money where my mouth is. And you know how hard it is for me to part with my money, but this was a very interesting one for me. What they call manar, with a mother of pearl dial that's quite iridescent, and in a dark way. I don't actually know. Yeah, it's a 50-piece limited edition. Um, Black mother of pearl dial, and I think it's a PVD coated stainless steel case. But in general, this series is very interesting. Yeah, it's all stainless steel in this series. Just this model is PVD black coated. Anyway, going back to the piece that they submitted for this competition, this is called Agumbe. I'm sure I'm not doing much justice to that word, but it's pardon me, it's a green dial that's circularly brushed or grained, rather, with kind of nature motifs at 3 and 9 o'clock, a tree at 9, kind of like a wave design at 3, and the date at 6 o'clock. I'm not gonna say anything about the date, just to point out that I don't like it. But MCM says Icapod vibes. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's you can get that. You can certainly get that. But then again, Icapod wasn't designed in a vacuum either, right? There's a good 60s, 70s tradition uh, of making these sorts of perfectly round cases, and they go to the collectors by the nickname of disco volante, which in Italian is the word for UFO, um, like the flying saucer, literally. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says about the black version of this watch, about the Manar, that is black PVD, physical vapor deposition. Um, yeah, I think this is a very cool watch, at least at the price point. If you like the color scheme, if you like the design, um, it's not too bad to take a punt on it, right? It's 1,100 Swiss francs, and I'm intrigued by the fact that they submitted it to the sports watch category, where they could go to the challenge category, where it is anything below 3,500. I wonder, now that I went down there, whether um, they had any other entries there that held them back from submitting another watch. No, actually. So yeah, it's quite brave that they went straight up to the sports watch category rather than trying to stake a claim at the budget. I like that. I like people who take a challenge. I'm not sure if they are gonna make it to the list of 6 final nominees, but who knows? Who knows? Overall, again, I'm not incredibly awed by this category. I do like the Parmigiani. I do like the new um, Roylock offshore chronograph that integrates steel and the new shade of ceramic that they finally successfully came up with. Um, and there are other interesting pieces, but nothing that really drives me to explore in more depth. But if you have any questions, if you want me to explore any of these further, I would more than happily go back to it for uh, for a super chat. Um, the jewelry section has a couple of heavy hitters. Some that I don't necessarily understand or enjoy, but others that I really like. You guys know I'm a huge fan of the Bulgari Serpenti. The Serpenti Eterna is a fantastic piece that um, basically is like a bangle more than a full uh, Serpenti design that wraps around a couple of times, but it's a very elegant looking piece. I think there are almost 10 carats of stones on it, a quartz movement in the serpentine head, made out of white gold with 428 diamonds and 263 emeralds, and it's practically $250,000 because it's 225,000 in Swiss francs. Very beautiful, very artful. I don't know if they are. I think once they have the final list of nominees, they usually tour these watches. So if it comes my way, I would be more than happy to even go out of my way a little to see if I can take a closer look at some of these watches rather than just pulling up these renders and photographs on a computer screen. Simon Brett was, of course, one of the hottest is one of the hottest new independent makers. It's hard to call him/them an emergent maker because their reputation is already quite established, and in fact, I'm sure they are back ordered for the next 6-7 years. But Simon Brett, as an independent watchmaker, won the so-called Horological Revelation Prize in the 2023 edition of this event. Now, Horological Revelation is one of those categories that are extra or that are supra categories, right? From all these nominees submitted for the established categories, there are also awards that are given to special recognition, right? There's, of course, the grand prize of all grand prizes, Aiguille d'Or, the golden watch hand, that's given to the best watch of the night. There's a chronometry award to the one that exemplifies the principles of and executes the principles of chronometric precision. There's the Horological Revelation. I think there's kind of like a special recognition prize. I forget the exact name or category, but that awards people who have over the years, over generations, over decades, contributed to the industry so much. But anyway, going back to the idea, Simon Brett was the Horological Revelation 2 years ago, and this year the watch that won him that award comes back in this jam set / high jewelry format. Thank you guys, by the way. I love seeing so many people watching my show, so please hit the like button when you get the chance. I really appreciate you. Shalom, Ryan Hoffrey. It's nice to see you, brother. And Dr. Bob's Nightmare says, I like the 18 karat Ichabod chrono. Robin Williams had a beautiful Ichabod chrono that I posted about, I think, a few weeks ago on my Instagram. So if any of you are interested, feel free to follow me on Instagram, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of interesting pieces that you don't see anywhere else in real life on actual people's wrists. And I always write up interesting historical and horological details about them too. So it's always, as always, going to be a horological journey as well. This is the Chronomètre Artisan, the high jewelry model, so to speak. It's a platinum case, 39 millimeters in diameter, 10.5 millimeters in thickness. It's a one-of-a-kind piece, apparently. Again, It costs to the tune of $250,000 this time in Swiss francs. The dial is set with more than 300 diamonds, as well as custom cut emeralds with invisible setting, where you can't, where they seem to have this organic appearance rather than visible seeding that interrupts perhaps your experience of their beauty. The screws and hands have this iridescent gradation from green to violet, which I think matches with the emeralds without necessarily taking away from their natural beauty. It's, again, I think it's a beautiful watch. It was already, in an important sense, very much an artisanal watch, as its name indicates, in its initial execution. And this one-of-a-kind piece offers those level of artisanal details, perhaps in a new light that other kinds of that another kind of customer might appreciate, again, because the watch is 250,000 Swiss francs, at least including the VAT. Now we are still in the jewelry category. I did want to take a look at artistic crafts. Again, artistic crafts is a very broad category, right? It includes watches that have specially crafted dials that preserve traditional methods of decoration and embellishment, or like AP's Royal Oak double balance wheel open worked here. It might be an example of material experimentation, right? Where they have subjected ceramic to their classic finishing techniques, which characterize the interplay of high polished and straight grained surfaces that give the Royal Oak its signature aesthetics. It can be something like the Hermès here, which has a number of different techniques playing together or being interwoven in the dial, and many others. So let's take a look at least some of these pieces. And again, in this category, you have 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, 20, 25 different watches. The most obvious one, again, since we already discussed the details of this new shade of ceramic, is the Royal Oak double balance wheel open worked. This is a 15407. No, 15416 CD. I'm sorry for missing that little detail, but it is the 41 millimeter version of this particular complication. The double balance wheel is, again, one of those open worked pieces that have a purpose behind them, right? That are not just skeletonized for the sake of it. That batwing style gold balance bridge you find pivoting right around 8 o'clock is actually part of the distinct caliber 3132 here, if I'm not mistaken. And the doubled balance wheel and balance spring in these watches are mounted on that same axis to increase the stability and precision of this watch, since this doubling increases the mass and inertia over against a single balance assembly. The two balance wheels compensate for each other's rate errors, so in a sense regulates each other. And this is a piece, case and bracelet, and of course the octagonal bezel, executed in that Bleu Nuit Nuage 50 shade of the ceramic, and it has that same shade, same kind of Prussian blue shade on its chapter ring as well. Quite an industrial look to it, kind of a naked look to its open worked elements, only distinguished by those pink gold details of the hour markers, the handset, as well as that open worked balance bridge itself. MCM says too early for this. I don't know what I don't know what that means. By the way, MCM also sent out one gift membership that went to Dr. Bob's Nightmare, so I really, really appreciate it. Ducky says they should take readability into account when judging these watches. Yeah, look, again, here it's just a rendering, but I've handled different versions of the Royal Oak double balance wheel open worked. It's quite legible, actually. It really is. My eyes are not too bad, all things considered. You know, I'm not aging terribly well overall, but my eyes are quite sharp still. And trust me, they're my best resource considering what I do in this life. So I do appreciate that. I need my eyes more than I need hair on top of my head, even though I'm quite bitter that I have so much hair everywhere else on my body, but not on my head. But that's another topic altogether. Coming back to the actual question, yes, of course, legibility is very important. And these renderings don't really show you the watch in the best light. Again, I haven't seen this particular example, but I've never really thought legibility was a problem with open worked Royal Oaks. I'm sure it could be better, but I've never thought that got in the way of that. MCM says, I meant that it is too early for the SB jam set piece. I don't disagree, you know, but the thing is, I think even with the initial batch of the orders, he had made one jam set for actually a woman, you know, for one of his customers who was a woman. And I have seen a lot of pictures of that on social media. I'm not going to go back and dig it. So, you know, to use the same watch as a re-entry, they needed to get inventive, right? They needed to find a way to find a category for it to enter into the competition. And I think jewelry is great. Again, I like some newly fangled, some young brands already trying to come up with an entire catalog, you know, have 2-3 different models and complications. But, you know, that's not what chronometre artisan represents. So I would rather have him focus on making distinct series of that watch, which has found quite a remarkable following already, than trying to make a complication to keep his hype going so he can enter the competition again. So a gem set version of the same watch doesn't seem like a bad way of finding a way into this competition again. Can't blame him, but I see your point as well. My watch channel says upvoted, love your IG account. Thank you, man. Thank you. I really, really do appreciate you. I'm also live on Kick, and I think once I reach 25K on Instagram, I will do lives there as well. I will basically stream to all three, and maybe have something also exclusive for Instagram too. Anyways, but I don't want to push people away by having a live on Instagram every night. I feel like people will run away from that more than anything. But yeah, I think this is a beautiful looking watch. I'm sure it's more legible than it looks when you see it in person. The price point is at 88,000 Swiss francs, including the VAT. But the problem is usually access to allocations when it comes to these kinds of pieces. Really, any Audemars Piguet piece. So much as we can make much of the price point which is already high, but I think the accessibility part is much more important, which is almost non-existent if you're a new customer to these kinds of very desirable pieces. I would very much appreciate, again, any likes. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button. People have been really supportive of me tonight, so I'm not going to ask for much more necessarily, even though I'm still far away from my goal if you want me to go longer. However, since MCM has been so supportive and talked about Schäufele Masterclass, I do want to highlight this Chopard LUC Quattro. Chopard overall and the Schäufele family in general are quite successful in this competition. I have barely seen a year pass by where Karl Friedrich Schäufele doesn't get an award from GPHG, whether it's through LUC Chopard, which is kind of their high horology line, or Ferdinand Berthoud, which is even more exclusive and even more adventurous in a certain sense, even though a lot of their pieces still stick to the best of the tradition of mechanical watchmaking. One of the more interesting pieces that LUC makes is their jump hour watch, as is presented here. The Quattro obviously is the perfect base for a jump hour watch. Some of you guys might know, but I will reiterate this: jump hour pieces or pieces that work with this kind of logic are very power hungry, right? So the fact that they have the Quattro, which is a 4-barrel movement where you have two coupled barrels stacked in pairs. And I think overall, the power reserve of this particular piece for a jump hour watch is quite significant at 192 hours. And that obviously is 8 days. Longer than a week at full charge. That's quite impressive. This piece is in yellow gold, 40 millimeters in diameter, and has a beautiful straw marquetry dial over a gold blank. Usually, marquetry dials are made out of wood, right? You talk about wooden marquetry usually, which is basically the art of applying pieces of veneer to form a larger decorative pattern. This is a technique that has been used on furniture or to decorate small objects for centuries, but it's also perhaps more rarely used to decorate watch dials too. Here, what is used rather than wooden veneers is actually a rye straw, apparently grown in the French region of Burgundy, carefully dyed to this specific shade of green, and literally you have each strand individually split with fingernail. So this is what you have on this dial. This is not just random blocks of wood, of something, some other material that's randomly painted or anything. It's literally strands of rye straw that's dyed green and then bound together to form these sorts of honeycomb pattern, like hexagons that hang together on the dial. By the way, what I love about this jump hour design as well is how simple and beautiful it is. You have this wondrous handmade backdrop, but simply shifting the window, the opening, the aperture, from 12 o'clock, where some brands have it, to 6 o'clock, you also get a full uninterrupted sight of the jump hour, right? Because when the minute hand hits here, 12 o'clock, meaning minute zero, top of the hour, nothing interrupts your view of that window at around the traditional 6 o'clock. So it's a simple and ingenious design, much improved on some of the traditional jump hour pieces. And here's a look at that movement where you have the two pairs of coupled barrels that give the 8-day power reserve here, which has an indicator on the back. You can, before you put it on, you can wind it, experience it that way, and see how much you have to go on this indicator. And of course, as with many elevated pieces from the LUC manufacturer, this piece holds a Geneva seal, which is inscribed both on the case and on the bridge of the movement as well. This is one of the strong contenders in the artistic crafts, LUC Quattro Spirits 25, a jump hour piece that was first introduced on the 25th anniversary of their independent manufacture. and this has a unique straw marqueterie dial, a beautiful combination of a yellow gold case and uniquely dyed green strands of straw that are forming a pattern inlaid with these hexagons on the dial. Very original and interesting piece. Very beautiful. 65,000 Swiss francs, including VAT, of this 8-piece limited series. Another one that I wanted to explore before moving into any other category was the Hermès piece. It's presented in their classic arceau, asymmetric arceau case, kind of modeled after stirrups, already an equestrian theme. We have kind of a hybrid dial here that, again, has a very unique combination of elements, because that dial has a similar marqueterie technique. This time, instead of straws, it's horsehair. There's the micro painting and engraving on the dial as well. And this extra pusher at 9 o'clock animates the horse. I'm guessing it's like it puts his tongue out or something. Let me see if there's a video of that on the website. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's take a look at that. It's a white gold piece, 41 millimeters in diameter. And as you see, that 9 o'clock pusher, when it's engaged, helps the horse to put its tongue out. Very cheeky. Kind of like it. Can't lie. I mean, it's a nice trick, you know, that Hermès does come from that particular lineage, right? They have entered business as saddle makers, so if anyone gets to play around with these kinds of games, these sorts of equestrian themes, it is Hermès, and they do it in a really grand and cheeky way in this arceau rocabarre de rire watch. The background is the horsehair marqueterie. You see again strands of pieces coming together and being interwoven to form a large pattern. I believe the horse head is largely painted, but also supported by engraving to give it this lively appearance. It is a painting originally by Dmitry Rybalchenko, who I believe has designed many different silk scarves for Hermès, including the Rocabarre de Rire scarf, which has a similar design, similar pattern. And otherwise, the piece is driven by the classic self-winding Hermès H 1837 movement, which, among other watches, operates Hermès H08 and also forms the base of, pardon me, many other complicated pieces by them. It's a movement exclusively made for them by Vaucher manufacturer in Fleurier. This piece is a 12-piece limited run, and it costs 159,000 in Swiss francs. Original the brands. Thank you, man. Cheers to YB and the great watch folks from your friends at Original. I'm glad to have made those friends. Thank you so much. $4.99. Again, every little bit helps, so I genuinely appreciate anyone who supports. Is this OC? Is this OC's new moniker? Dr. Bob's Nightmare says OC. Okay, then yeah. Hello, friend. Nice to see you as well. MCM says Patrick Philippe and Alan Gonzone have major competition. Which brand are we talking about in particular? I think they always do, but I would in Chopard, LUC Chopard, I certainly agree. You know, I would much rather, again, this is just my personal choice, right? I would much rather get an LUC 1860 than a Calatrava. Lange is its own thing, so I don't even want to compare that watch to any other dress watch in this makeshift manner. But I think they have built a very solid reputation gradually in an history that's now nearing 3 decades. Quite young, right? As a high horology manufacturer, making its mark, even though, of course, the Chopard brand itself goes much further back. But I think if they tightened a few screws, at LUC, like eliminating parts of the line that don't hold the Geneva seal, really focusing on, a couple of the more successful, popular lines, like the XPS versions of the Alpine Eagle, like the 1860, perhaps presenting a few not unique complications, but again, predictable, usual suspects, like have a great chronograph there, make smaller cased perpetual calendars. I think LUC has a lot going on for itself, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be more popular, where it shouldn't sell more watches. And you know how big of a fan I am for Ferdinand Berthoud as well, but that's such a different segment, right? And so much more exclusive. Even though it's part of the same family, I don't look at them in the same light. But I'm a big fan of the Schäufele family's work at whichever level. But I think LUC can be so much more stronger and so much more popular. And I know, like Nick Fox, for example, always takes Carl Friedrich Schäufele to task whenever he has a chance to interview in public, right? God forbid if you sell watches and that kind of stuff. So I feel like some of it is even a certain humility on the one hand, and a preference for exclusivity. You can even see that in the events and people that they choose to sponsor. Chopard, right? They sponsor the Cannes Film Festival, right? They don't go after sporting competitions. They don't necessarily go after athletes. They don't go after just every celebrity, right? They choose that heightened caliber that turns up with an arts movie at the Cannes Festival. Do you know what I mean? So it's I think some of that uh, exclusivity and uh, lack of popularity as well is somewhat self-cultivated too. I also like the Kudoke 5. Um, you guys know, I mean, again, from a time telling perspective, speaking of watches that should be more legible, this is not really a watch where you have a very precise and on top of that also um, easy reading of the time. But I've always liked, what I most liked about Kudoke was always this unique handcrafted um, two parts ring that serves um, as a 24-hour display, right? It's like a day and night indicator slash uh, a kind of 24-hour hand. Here, it's the main attraction, right? You know, it's the entire center dial where you have uh, it as large, domed, and as hand-graved as ever. The celestial disc, which makes a full rotation every 24 hours. Um, and the dial ring around it, the two-part dial ring around it, is divided into 15 minutes increments. And if, as you can see, for example, here, right, it's essentially 8:15 p.m. Right, that's the watch, and I guess you can already tell it's p.m. from also the darker part of that celestial disk taking over the upper half of the dial. But you have this uh, golden detail to one of the stars that is more shaped like an arrow, which shows the time on that outer dial ring. Again, it's a very artful execution of what was um, an element of the K2 design. Here, it's much more enlarged. I really like the aesthetics of the piece. Not sure if it's a very legible or utilitarian piece, but it's certainly very, very interesting. And I do want to show you the Kudoke 2 or K2 if you want to say, where that celestial disc or the 24-hour hand, part of me, is much more humble and part of a sideshow rather than anything, right? On a two-hander, here it's at 12 o'clock, roughly a subdial that shows the 24-hour hands, but with that same kind of workmanship in miniature. I think it's a novel idea. I like what they are doing. Um, Again, it's not the most legible watch. It's not necessarily the most utilitarian, but it's quite beautiful nonetheless. And here's the movement, which itself I think is very interesting and artful. I like the frosted finish on the bridges, and the hand engraving, the freehand engraving on the balance cock, which God only knows really gives a whole new meaning visually to the word balanced cock as well. Um, I, I guess Stefan Kudoke has a sense of humor about it. I hope I mean it in the best way possible. But this is a watch I really like, and I like to see it in the artistic crafts competition, because I always thought that 24-hour ring, the celestial ring, was a very beautiful and enticing element of the Kudoke 2, and it's nice to see it given the center stage in Kudoke 5. And this piece, by the way, is 18,500 roughly in Swiss francs, including the VAT. I think for the artistic crafts, I am mostly, no, I actually have at least a couple more watches, at least one more watch rather, that I want to highlight, and that's the Voutilainen Van Uit or 28 GML Soyu. This is again a very beautiful watch in and of itself, without anything more artful done onto it. However, here, this pièce unique, this one-of-a-kind watch, actually has a Japanese lacquer dial that is apparently the work of the artist Tatsuyo Kitamura. Soyu is a coined word that is reflected in the striking contrast between blue, green, gold, and red colors. So evokes in the outer part of the dial, the C represented by deep, clear blue-green hues, while U, with its shades of gold and red in the center, signifies a natural organic form symbolizing solar energy. It's kind of a mosaic look with a seemingly radiant sun-like center that almost shatters onto these pieces of blue-green to form a more watery, seemingly liquid periphery around that solar center. It's quite beautiful work. Apparently, the dial was created using the urushi lacquering technique over thousands of hours of detailed work. It incorporates raw materials from urushi, which is tree sap, kinpun, which is various kinds of gold powder, kirigane, cut gold sheets, kirigai, cut shells from New Zealand abalone, and the great green turban. This is also a piece that integrates a 24-hour display at its center, right, at that solar center, with a center dial that makes a full rotation every 24 hours. So you have basically one time zone, of course, with your two-hander at the center, and then you can have a reference time with this extra center dial disc and its pointer right here, right? For example, now you have the time, 10:13, and in another time zone it is actually at night, 9 p.m., 9:13. Platinum case, 39 millimeters in diameter, relatively svelte at 11.2 millimeters in thickness. And of course, as always, The highlight is that movement, again, with its beautiful frosted three-quarter plates, the large balance wheel with a low beat movement that has 18,000 VPH, which 2.5 hertz, right? So you see in the slow contraction and expansion of those springs a kind of vivid image of a beating heart. I really love the teardrop lugs on this case design, and again, the so-called observatory hands, both with their rhodium-plated white gold parts and the heat-blued loops. They're beautiful, kind of look like the bird beak, which I actually really like and enjoy. MCM is obviously a big fan of Kari Voutilainen as well. Yeah, this is a beautiful piece as well. I really like that dial. And once again, it's a very ingenious and even artistically apt solution of displaying two time zones at once as well, which is very pleasing in a piece that supposedly foregrounds aesthetics above all, right? But it's not only about that. So now I will leave the mechanical clock to last, and that's a really interesting category too, although I have much less to say about it. There's still at least one piece that I really like. However, perhaps the most interesting categories are the challenge category and the petite aiguille category. By the way, there is a Bangalore watch company watch, and it is the one that I like that is in the challenge category. I have somehow missed that at my first glance, but that's okay. These two categories are quote unquote the affordable watches that are submitted to this competition. Petite aiguille is for any watch that's cheaper than 10,000 in Swiss francs, but no less than 3,500 Swiss francs. And then the challenge category is basically anything cheaper than that, than 3,500 Swiss francs. In this category, some of my favorite watches are the Fears, or rather, Arnos Pewter Blue. I really like this. You guys know I like rectangular pieces, rectangular designs, as a big fan of the Reverso. But this is, of course, nothing like the Reverso, not exactly anything like the Tank either, but a watch that basically takes after those early 20th century designs. Apparently, Fears, which is a so-called Phoenix brand, right, an earlier brand that's being revived in our day, had this heritage of producing tall rectangular watches in the 20s and 30s. So this basically takes some elements of these and blends it with contemporary design elements. It's a curved profile, so it actually is not just a rectangular slab on the wrist, which some earlier reversals, for example, actually are. But I like them anyways. Pardon me, but this is a more presumably ergonomic design. A Swiss-made case that combines high-polished surfaces with fine linear brushing. A very compact case, only 8.4 millimeters thick, but it is a self-winding watch that is powered by a Sellita SW1000 movement. Perhaps the most interesting element of the design is the dial, which has a circular blue center that has a snailed center in and of itself and a circularly brushed hour track. And that circular dial is surrounded by a contrasting shape, by a shape that's in tension with it. So the negative space actually taken over by a great gray rectangle, so to speak. Kind of a hobnail pattern that surrounds, that is applied with CNC machinery, and that surrounds that blue dial. And the watch apparently comes with a custom blue FKM rubber strap, as well as a leather strap as well. I think it's a cool looking piece. You know, the price point, I think, for a Sellita powered watch is a little expensive. I haven't seen it in person, so I don't know if the aesthetics of the dial are deserving of it. But at the end of the day, it's a CNC cut dial, so I'm not sure how impressive it would be in person, to be honest. Stainless steel, and the price point, including the VAT, is 4,400 in Swiss francs. Again, right now we are looking at the initial list of nominees for the Petite Aiguille. Again, any watch that's priced between 3,500 to 10,000. Another British brand, Christopher Ward. This is the C12 Loco. It's their so-called integrated bracelet, sporty watch, right? We talked about this. Everyone has to have one. So Christopher Ward decided to have one too. That's, to me, to my eyes, looks very generic. However, in this particular version of it, they have their second in-house movement with an interesting elevated open balance design, and it also incorporates a free-sprung balance wheel, which is a first for the brands. The hand-wound movement apparently delivers an accuracy of -0 +7 seconds per day. 6-day-hour power reserve. It's a twin-barrel movement with again a bespoke free-sprung balance wheel, which replaces traditional regulating pins with inertia screws, and the balance allows for finer adjustment and improved long-term accuracy. Apparently, there's over 5 hours of hand finishing that is applied to each piece with a multi-layered movement combining a grained stippling, brushing, and polishing of multiple rounded facets. The two-part dial features Zapon tinte to apply color to the finely brushed wings, flanking the floating sapphire time-telling dial, meaning these two vertically brushed wings that surround the dial. And then the lower part of the dial has this grained finish, which is here orange. I think there are other color options, which is not something that I explored. Frankly, Christopher Ward is not one of my favorites. Piece. This is the 41 millimeter version of the new 12 case. The 12, of course, takes its name from this 12-sided bezel that surrounds the dial, or that frames the dial. And I believe this new version is also slightly thinner than before, which is 13.7 millimeter in total thickness. Which somewhat misses the point, of course, this particular 70s genre of quote-unquote integrated bracelet or sports chic watches, because that svelte, thin, even ultra-thin elegance is part of the design, really. This particular piece is priced at 4,195, so right under 4,200 in Swiss francs. And this is how the movement looks from the back. I think the Foulard Marie is cool too. Again, I already like the Disco Volante design, and here it comes with a Milanese style bracelet. But what they did differently this time for this particular design is that it has baguette cut lab-grown diamonds on the sector dial that alternate with the usual hour markers. And the dial itself is apparently an onyx dial. So it's a very, very cool look, honestly. And compared to the usual line, which I think already is at 2,500, this piece is not that much more expensive. It is 3,785, so 3,800 including the VAT. So there's some markup, right? Considering the metal bracelets, matching bracelets, and of course the onyx style, even the lab-grown diamonds. But that being said, it's a cool-looking watch, and it really changes the aesthetics of the piece that to me looked very colorful and excessively so in the past versions. I like the movement that they have used, which is the manually wound Pessu 7001, classic ultra-thin movement. It was one of the first movements, if not the first, that was designed in accordance with traditional watchmaking, yet intended for industrial production. So it's very interesting. I really like this particular iteration. of the watch, all in stainless steel, including the mesh bracelet, stone dial, onyx, namely, with lab-grown diamonds. Very interesting piece, 38 millimeters in diameter and less than 9 millimeters in thickness. This is the Furlan Marie Disco Volante. Before I get into another interesting piece in this category from Gaga Laboratorio, I will grab more water to drink, so I will let you enjoy that piece. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please do so. Feel free to share the link to this or to my Instagram page, or both, with other collectors and watch enthusiasts. And stay tuned, I'll be back in 2 seconds. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says, it's crazy how I think 4K is an affordable watch now. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's not only you, the industry thinks so too, right? Because literally, the challenge category is under what is a little more than 4K in US dollars, right? That's 3,500 in Swiss francs. And in fact, the Petite Aiguille, which still is an affordable watch category, is anything under 10,000 in Swiss francs. So you might even say, the industry has even a more lax standards, because that's 12 and a half basically in US dollars. This I think is a very nice looking piece, the Labermatic 50, pardon me, in stainless steel. I really like the lugs on this watch. A very unique case design, a very pastel kind of robin's egg, duck's egg blue, um, that kind of harkens back to Tiffany blue, of course, but it's very cool, very creative representation of the minute track at the center, and the hour is shown in an aperture in the classic 12-hour, or 12 o'clock rather, 12 o'clock position, as you can see, with a crown also set at 12 o'clock, which is relatively unusual, or less common. Let's put it this way. The watch is a little bit oversized at 42 millimeters in diameter, and a little bit thick, but not too much, at 1330. Very interesting dial design, something that looks, I think, both somewhat exotic, but also quite modern. And the price point is 4,215 Swiss francs, so it's not really prohibitive either. Habring 2 has Joseph, again in this particular category. It's a regulator dial with a cushion-shaped case, which is not something that, as far as I know, they have worked very widely before. It's their first regulated dial that they added to their lineup last year. 38.5, I think 47 lug to lug. Not a very thick watch at 8.4 millimeters. It has their classic hand wound movements. Nicely decorated, if in a industrial manner rather than something that is extremely embellished or beautiful. Captain Kirk, for the previous watch, the Gaga Laboratorio Labormatic, I think it's like a scale, right? You know, it's not a jump hour, so that's why. That's why it's kind of sliding. Here, of course, the regulator dial is a throwback to a time in horology where the minute precision was the highlight of a precise watch. These are the kinds of watches that would be put in the middle of watchmaking workshops. These are the kinds of watches that railroads would use in their stations, so everyone could synchronize their watches, their clocks, their pocket watches, to avoid all sorts of conflicts. And really it was a life or death question, right? You know, when something like this is used in the railway system. So it's a kind of dial design that puts the minute hand at the center, as is the case here. Here you have the hour hands on a subdial at the traditional 6 o'clock position, and then you have a subdial for the seconds at 12 o'clock, as well as power reserve indicator that pivots at around 3 o'clock. I think this is a very nice industrial looking piece. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of Hopping 2. This piece is at 7,000, priced at 7,000 Swiss francs. I think it's a very, very original and interesting number. Yeah, when we were looking at Gaga Laboratorio, I don't think it's a jump hour watch. I think both the hour and minutes are shown on like a sliding scale. And again, guys, I just choose what I like. You know, if you like that, that's also great. But that being said, if you want me to pay attention to something else, please feel free to suggest. This is the link to the website that we're looking at, to the competition's website. And let me know also whether you prefer the new camera position or whether I was fine before. You know, I don't know if that's something I want to take a vote on, but hey. I like the matte too, by the way, the matte editions pieces, the first generation, the first application of it. To me, it was maybe too quirky. Maybe it was too much fun. So I didn't really like it. But this particular piece, which is designed by Eric Giroux, I don't know. I think it's more original and to me more interesting. Mad Editions is of course the alternative accessible label created by MBNF by Maximilian Busse. Here he teamed up with the designer Eric Giroux and created a piece that um, has this sort of uh, maybe kind of a musical theme to it, because uh, the watch has this slight gesture towards looking like a record player of some sort. It has two raised central subdials, one of which shows the hours, the other the minutes, right? The right one, the hour, the left one, the minutes. They both look like turntables of a DJ mixing console. And the central dial on which they rotate has these vinyl-like textures, of course, with its grooves and satin finishes. And then there's a surrounding platter that is apparently inspired by the stroboscopic band of the Technics SL 1200s, where those stop pins actually are superluminova, so they glow in the dark. Every flick of the wrist sets that platter spinning, apparently, and apparently, if you listen closely, you can hear the sounds of that spin as well. And of course, on the back, you get the reverse side of that spinning piece. 42 millimeters, but I've tried this watch on. It's not, it's not a big watch, really. I think it wears really well. I like that they went again for a completely different design for the second project rather than the Mad, just slight revision of the Mad one. And this piece apparently has the same Swiss La Joux-Perret movement that was found in the Mad One S, now enhanced with a bespoke jump hour module developed by MBNF, Swiss made, Swiss assembled, the description says. And this piece is priced at 3,135 in Swiss francs. We are looking at the initial list of competing, or rather submitted watches in the Petite Aiguille category, which is one of the more accessible categories here, more accessibly priced watches. I'm a big fan of the Otsuka Lotek, as we talked about before. This is the number 5 Kai. It's wandering hours. It's execution of the wandering hours complication, right? You're looking at 546 roughly here, right? Where the hours rotate in this particular way and show with the notch the specific minutes as well. I really like the retrofuturistic design elements of these pieces. They look a little big to my eyes, and I don't know how they wear. I've never seen them in person, but I really like the number 5, number 7.5, etc. I think it's very cool. Otsuka Lotek is a Japanese brand founded by Jiro Katayama, And because so far, at least, and I think this will change soon, their watches are only available for the Japanese market through a lottery like system where you get the allocation. So they don't usually make it across the ocean, so to speak, to these parts. But I think that's about to change. This is the Wandering Hours piece made by them, the number 5 Kai, and it's priced at 4,300 in Swiss francs. Another piece that piqued my interest in the Petite Aiguille category was the Seagull Rattrapante chronograph. This is, as you can probably glean from the name, a Chinese-made watch. It's part of a 70-piece limited series, housed in a 42-millimeter titanium case. It's quite thick as well, 16 millimeters in thickness. Again, for a split-second chronograph for a rattrapante, that's perhaps understandable. It's not necessarily a beautiful design, nor is it really balanced, but to have the opportunity to acquire a split-second chronograph at around 3,500 in US dollars is not really a horrible proposition when you think about it. 3,380 in Swiss francs is the Swiss franc price tag on this. It's powered by the ST 1961 split-second chronograph movement based on the ST 1901. Here's how it looks through the exhibition case back. Not so bad. Not so bad. Again, interesting piece, not the prettiest looking watch, but it's an interesting price proposition for a split-second chronograph. That's the Seagull 1963 Rattrapante 70th anniversary special edition. I think I have one or two more that I would like to highlight in this category. The Seiko Vanak is very interesting. I like this King Seiko piece. Self-winding movement with a 3-day power reserve. Again, a watch that is this integrated bracelet piece in stainless steel, with unique design elements from Seiko, right? That's more sculptural than ultra thin. I think that they had a similar model in the 70s from King Seiko, which here appears with an updated aesthetic, a purple dial, which apparently takes its inspiration from evening twilight over Tokyo, the city of its birth. It's an interesting looking piece. It has a movement that's called caliber 8L45 with the 3-day power reserve, as I mentioned. Not a bad level of accuracy for Seiko. It's plus 10 to minus 5 seconds per day. Again, I think it's an interesting looking watch, and it's priced at 3,400 in Swiss francs. Not too bad. Sherpa is coming back, so they have the Ultra Drive Sun with an internal dive timing bezel that you can set with the extra crown, a salmon dial, which has a sunburst finish. I really like that, actually. And it's a classic diver watch. And apparently it has a spiritual complication for good vibes. I really don't know what that means, but I'm sure the description has some measure of explanation for it. I do like the watch aesthetically quite a bit. I like that unique salmon dial. I think for at least for a dive watch, I mean unique maybe is not the right word, but it's rare to find that sort of dial in a sports watch, and I think here it makes for a good pair with the off-white classic tropic rubber strap. Apparently the seconds wheel and the escape wheel are both micro laser engraved with Tibetan mantras. That's the spiritual complication. Okay, according to the tradition of Himalayas, the smallest engraved mantra in the world, 1 millimeter long, 0.15 millimeter high. The mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum, engraved many times in both wheels. Per rotation, the movement thus spreads its good vibration into the world more than 30 million times per year, roughly one per second. It's the first time a watch movement is transcended from a pure machine into a spiritual instrument. Okay. That's not for me, but I'm not going to stand in their way. But I really appreciate the aesthetics of the watch, right? It's not, I don't know, I don't really understand what they mean by that spiritual complication. Maybe I'm not spiritual enough for something like that, but I appreciate it, and it's a pretty watch indeed, and it is priced at 5,737 in Swiss francs. So not cheap by any means. Sherpa Ultra Drive Sun, but it is really a gorgeous modern dive watch with a unique aesthetic. I think the last watch I want to look at from from this category is the Toledano Chan, which is the B1.2 release. This was their brutalist design watch that drew inspiration from a specific window in the Breuer building in New York. I think it looks very interesting actually on the wrist as well. If you can see these pieces in person, feel free to take a look. I think the asymmetry of the piece in and of itself is quite intriguing to look at. This piece has a dark mother of pearl dial. What I also like about the Toledano Chan piece is because is its elegance as well. Again, only 10 millimeters in thickness, which should be part of the design of these kinds of pieces, if you ask me. And I think in this particular edition, the Tahitian mother of pearl is quite beautiful as well, and the piece is listed at 4,780 in Swiss francs, including the VAT. I think that pretty much covers the petite aiguille category for me. The challenge category, I will come right back to that. I just want to talk about the mechanical clock that I really like. I saw an example of this in person at the MBNF lab in Beverly Hills. I think this is actually where this particular picture is from. It's made by L'Épée 1839. This is like the mechanical clock maker that was recently bought by Louis Vuitton and has in the past done a lot of collaborations with MBNF. And this is precisely one of them, the Albatross. So it's basically a design inspired by the Albatross airship in Jules Verne's Robur the Conqueror. Of course, Jules Verne had a broader fascination with flights and with flight and hot air balloons as well. It's a chiming clock as well, right? Where it chimes both the specific hours on the top of the hour and single strike on the half hour. It's an automaton composed of 16 pairs of propellers that launch into action every hour. And a mechanical computer lets the owner choose between the full operation mode, full quiet modes, and silent mode with the propellers running or just the chime. Right? You can either have the movement of those propellers that launch into action at the top of every hour. You can have a full quiet mode where you don't have any movement, just the timekeeping. You can have the silent modes where you have the animation, or rather the movement of the automaton every hour, but not the chime or just the chime. And apparently there's also a repeat on demand button to repeat the predefined chime automaton setting or to activate the propellers in a standalone continuous motion. Inside it are two movements, two winding system. One powers the time and striking hour, and the other drives the automaton. 3 barrels in total, 2 barrels for the time and the striking functions, and then 1 for the automaton. Let me see if there's a video of it that we can take a quick look at here because it's a very interesting piece to see in person. And you can crank it up using that. There's the time display right in the middle. And again, the chiming functions too. So that was my choice of the mechanical clock. Very cool piece, which is a collaboration between Lepe and MBNF. And the price of a piece from this 8-piece limited series is 128,640 in Swiss francs. Now, finally, for the challenge category, which will wrap up my coverage of the competing watches for the GPHG 2025, the so-called Oscars of the horological world. We will come back to this when the final lists of nominees are announced. I like the Atelier Wen. A friend of mine has one of these pieces, one of their earlier models with that ice blue guilloche dial. Frankly, I've seen a lot of watches, a lot of the more budget options in this category of integrated bracelet watches. The cheap ones feel really cheap, honestly, but I think Atelier Wen has found the sweet spot that really reflects the price point. This is the titanium version, titanium bracelets and case. I think it's a limited series of 498 pieces. I'm sure they wanted to use the number 8 somewhere. And here it's a 498 piece edition rather than 500 pieces. I think the purple dial is very striking, and the guilloche work on these pieces are done in a very interesting manner, very captivating manner. And the watches, again, have that feeling of being, quote unquote, ultra thin, 9.8 millimeters in thickness altogether. And these watches are proudly made in China, inside and out, case, bracelet, movement, everything. And they take that as a matter of pride rather than hiding it as it has become kind of a calling card in most of the rest of the industry. So I think that's very admirable when it comes to Atelier Wen. This is in the challenge category, so the price point is actually even more enticing. 2905, 2,905 in Swiss francs, including VAT. Another watch that I wanted to take a look at from the challenge category is the Behrens. As I mentioned, the Bangalore watch company's Peninsula, and the Manar version was also included with the black mother of pearl dial and the PVD coated case on the rubber strap. I kind of like it. This was 1100 in Swiss francs. I like the Behrens piece. This is also a Chinese maker. Very futuristic design. Very unique case design that has this sort of spaceship slash mystic vessel kind of look. A movement that's laid out for most of its parts, and then of course it has a unique time display at the lower parts at an angle where you have two rotating barrels, basically like a linear display of the hour and the minutes. And apparently there's a date display up here as well. A very interesting piece. And again, it's right under 3,000, 2,999 in Swiss francs. Very wearable too. Not sure how legible it is in experience. I've not seen this piece in person, but again, very interesting proposition at that price point. We're wrapping up our coverage. If you have not hit the like yet, please do so. It really helps. And for everyone who has supported the stream today, I really appreciate you. Thank you again. I can't wait to come back tomorrow. You guys know I have a soft spot for Denison as well. This is one of the natural stone dials that they have made with the classic throwback cushion cases designed by Emmanuel Getz, whom you would know through his work in Audemars Piguet, specifically the Royal Oak Offshore, but this is, of course, far from that design. On the other end of the spectrum, very elegant, ultra-thin dress watch, quartz-powered, kind of this sleek, pebble-like look in a cushion case, paired up with natural stone dials. I think it's very interesting. The tiger eye is beautiful too. I have the red agate that's paired up with a classic stainless steel case. Here you have the PVD gold case, which might be a more fitting combination for the tiger eye. And this is 660 in Swiss francs, 690 in US dollars. there are a handful of other pieces that I wanna highlight. I just want to make sure. Yeah, I think three more pieces. Venezianico is again a budget brand that has here Arsenal, which is their integrated bracelet watch. Very generic design, but somehow when you have a meteorite dial that's uninterrupted like this with a stainless steel integrated bracelet watch, it does produce an intriguing look, and the price points, again belonging to this category, is obviously very inviting at 1,200 Swiss francs, including VAT. This could be an interesting value proposition as well. I think it's, again, depending on how it feels in person, hopefully not cheap, but this to me looks much more interesting aesthetically than the Tissot PRX, to be honest. The Serica Parade. Again, I like this kind of exaggerated elliptical design. I'm pretty sure that this model has very, if I recall correctly, it has a few different dial options, certainly a black dial option. But the one that's submitted here is the brass one, which through the grooves on the dial has this almost solar look. The piece is executed in stainless steel, 35 by 41, and only 8.2 millimeters in thickness. Very classic looking dress watch with contemporary design elements, a simple two-hander with a self-winding mechanical movement that uses the Soprod M100 caliber. And I think it's also interesting because it has 100 meters of water resistance, which for a small enough watch like this is quite impressive. And I like the fact that it has a very plain, sterile, unbranded dial as well. Very, very fascinating look. And this piece is priced at 1,400 in Swiss francs as well, including VAT. I think I have one or two more watches that I want to look at. So if you have any last minute questions or requests, please feel free to chime in, send them in the chat. Otherwise, I would happily take likes. I would happily take comments after the live stream ends. Chrono Tokyo, as you guys know, is one of my favorite micro brands. It is kind of like the diffusion brand of the esteemed Japanese independent watchmaker Hajime Asoka. And he has, over the years, made a lot of interesting designs and brought even some complications into the picture, which have piqued a lot of people's interests globally. It does have this kind of drop model, right? Where unique designs come into come into the market in limited numbers, relatively limited numbers, and sell exclusively online at a specific window of time. This is a power reserve display piece that he brought back. With a self-winding mechanical movement. Pardon me, that's apparently no longer in production. A guilloche dial with kanji scripts for the hour markers, a kind of baby blue colorway, a metallic baby blue, however. A unique guilloche pattern with a power reserve display that's located roughly at 930. Otherwise, the watch is a classic three-hander. I think very beautiful and unique looking piece from Chrono Tokyo. The diffusion maker of the Japanese independent master watchmaker Hajime Asaoka's piece. Again, very beautiful piece, no fuss, no muss, except for the power reserve indicator, no date display. And he has actually put a black onyx cabochon on the crown, which marks a diamond jubilee. And Hajime Asoka, I believe, is 60 years old now, so he's marking his birthday as well. Very beautiful watch, priced at 1,930 in Swiss francs. This is the Chrono Tokyo Jubilee Sensu AOL Shirai. Stainless steel, 38 millimeters, 11.2 millimeters in thickness. And yes, it's a very nice fan-like design for the power reserve display again at that 930. I think the guilloche dial is very beautiful as well. All right, it's almost midnight. Thank you again for your support. Thank you for being here. MCM for renewing your membership and gifting one. Chalk flew up and original the brand for your generous super chats, and Basil also for renewing your YouTube membership as well. Everyone who has contributed in the chat, asked questions, I'm really grateful to you. As you guys know, I have finally made my comeback to the YouTube live stream world. It's been pretty regular so far. I'm trying to even put more time into it, and seeing this kind of support, of course, encourages me for the future. But if you want to support me more, again, YouTube offers a number of different options, and I even give you more options that I provide links for in the video description as well. Feel free to leave a comment after the broadcast ends. Of course, you should always follow me on Instagram as well if you don't already. And you can do that in the link that I'm dropping right now into the chat. And if you share the link to this channel and or the Instagram with other collectors, with watch enthusiasts, that would be great because it helps me expand the community that has now reached almost, well, that has reached a combined number of 25,000 followers, but hopefully it will be much, much more quite soon. Thank you to Dr. Bob. Thank you so much. You had the chance to grab that gift membership from MCM. So I'm glad that fell to you. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. If you have any questions, any requests, any demands, anything at all, feel free to write it in the comments. I will get back to you for sure. I'll see you in the next one. Wear and enjoy your watches. Take care.